Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the Paint with Lovejoy channel and podcast. If you are a first-time or beginner painter and you're having trouble blending paint, I'm going to give you 3 options that you can practice and grow your confidence with, so stay tuned. Welcome to the Paint with Lovejoy podcast, the place where first-time and beginner painters can learn more about acrylic painting, the mindset of learning a new skill, and where your creative questions will be answered. Thanks for joining. Hey guys, welcome to the Paint with Lovejoy Ask Lovejoy podcast. Thanks so much for checking this out. Please subscribe to the channel. And if you do have any questions, please leave a comment or send me an email at paintwithlovejoy@gmail.com. So this is a question that I've gotten from quite a few of my students. So I'm going to do a video demonstration for this one. And the biggest question is, how do I blend paint? How do I get better at blending? How do I feel more comfortable with blending? So if you have that question, I'm going to give you 3 different ways to blend your paint as a first-time and beginner painter. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about the quality of your paint. And I'm actually going to start there. So with the quality of your paint, if you are using craft paint or that folk art paint, and I'm talking about the little tubes that come in those little containers. They have every color imaginable, and they're generally like $1 or $2. They're not that expensive. If you're using those types of paint, they are actually geared more for painting on furniture, painting on metal, and for painting stuff that just needs one kind of brush stroke. But that type of paint actually dries really fast and is meant for just that immediate application, 1 or 2 brush strokes, not necessarily meant for some serious blending that you'll see in some of my videos and some of the other videos on the YouTube. So if you are using that type of paint, go ahead, use that paint, finish it up, and use it what you can, and just kind of maybe pick your paintings for that don't require as much blending. Now, as you move up into student grade paint, and like I talked about in another podcast, the difference between artist grade and student grade paint's a little bit more affordable, more approachable, and you actually get a little bit more paint for the student grade paint compared to the same color in the artist grade paint. If you are a first-time and beginner painter, don't buy artist grade paint. It is going to be the more expensive paint that you're going to see at the store. Don't buy that just yet, because I want to make sure that you are comfortable with painting before you start purchasing more expensive and better quality supplies. So for student grade paint, stick with Liquitex Basics is the brand that I recommend, and that's the closest that you'll see to the consistency of the paint in the videos in my tutorials on my channel. But the student grade acrylic paint is going to be a little bit thicker. It's going to have a longer drying time and give you more ability to blend. So again, when you're done with that folk art or the cheaper paint, step up to the student grade paint, try a few different brands if you want, and kind of find your comfort level with the dry time of the paint of your choice. And with that being said, sometimes if you go to a friend's house and paint and it's a little bit different type of paint, you're going to have to adjust your painting and blending based on the paint that you're using. And that's actually a good thing. So don't get stressed out if you go somewhere they don't have the exact materials that you're comfortable with. When you do try other materials, it just makes it a little bit more fun, and you widen your knowledge of what you like and what you don't like. So don't be afraid to try different things. So with that being said, once you kind of determine which paint that you are using, either fast drying paint or a little bit slower drying student grade paint, that will affect the way that you can blend and the way that you'll actually apply the paint. So I'm going to switch over to the tutorial, the little demo for a few different ways for you to blend your paint at home. And I will give the options for the fast drying and the little bit slower drying paint. So I'll see you guys over there. All right, in this demo, the fast drying craft paint will be on the left-hand side, and I'm squirting it on the plate right now, and I do want you to notice just kind of how it expands and kind of is a little bit runny compared to the acrylic paint, the slower drying paint that will be on the right-hand side. And you can even see a little bit of a color difference between the 2 colors. So you will have that variation when you go from brand to brand. So that's okay. So the first one I'm going to demonstrate is what we call dry blending, and that is where the surface is dry, your brush is wet, and we're going to apply the light color first, and I'm just using yellow and red here. You can switch out whatever color you want. And I'm going to bring that down about halfway in that box, leave a little bit of space, and then I'll clean the brush, and from the bottom I'll put the red paint. Then I'll go back and clean the brush again, and then grab the yellow paint and overlap the red. And I do recommend that you do this on maybe an old canvas or a panel or something, so that way you can find kind of what's comfortable for you with blending. And you will notice that with the craft paint, the fast drying paint, as I'm about ready to grab this yellow here and start doing some of the blending, you will be able to tell that some parts of that paint are already starting to dry. This paint dries very, very quickly. So you either have to work in smaller spaces or just work really quickly. And as you're doing the blending, just kind of play with that pressure. You can add a touch of water, but you don't really want to do that with the craft paint because it's already so thin. Now here I'm going to move into the student grade paint. This is our slower drying paint. I'm going to basically do that same application where I'm starting with the yellow at the top. We'll leave a little bit of space, and then we'll have the red come in from the bottom. And then I'll clean that brush, grab the light color, the yellow, and do the same type of blending. But you will be able to notice that it's much easier to blend. The paint is still wet. You can actually see a bit of the reflection, and that's from my light source for filming. And as you can kind of see that reflection and the shininess, that means the paint is wet. And already that left-hand side, the fast drying craft paint, is already pretty much fully dry as I'm working on the artist grade paint right now. So here we clean the brush, grab that yellow paint, and I'm kind of playing with that pressure as I mix this yellow into the red. Now you do want to be really careful as you do this mixing, and if you pick up your brush and go into the yellow paint, you're going to want to wipe off your brush first because you don't want to start having that darker color paint get into the top portion of your blending or of your canvas. And you can go back and add anything, and you can still see that that paint is still very wet, and it makes it nice to blend. And I am doing this kind of fast. Just so that way I'm not taking up too much of you guys' time today. All right, so that kind of is nice dry blending method. We're going to be moving into the wet blending method, and that is where your surface is wet, your brush will be wet, and then you'll be applying your paint to it. So you can either use your brush like I'm doing right now and apply that water to the surface, or I've got a nice little spray bottle and I'm just spraying it and getting it kind of nice and soaked. You don't want to go overboard. You'll find your happy balance based on your surface level. And then on this one, I'm actually going to start with the lighter color and fill in the entire space. Then we'll grab the darker color and add it on top of this from the bottom up. And because we are starting with a wet surface, this is diluting our paint very quickly, diffusing it into that wet surface. And you will see a color difference between the wet and the dry method. And here again, as I added that red paint, just a tiny amount, not nearly the amount of pigment from the dry method. So just a little bit of red on that bottom. You paint right on top of that lighter color and play with your brush pressure as you do some of the blending. And then here I'm going to repeat the same process with the student grade paint where it stays wet a little bit longer. And then when you're already going onto a wet surface, same thing, it does dilute the pigment, but because it's student grade paint, it has a bit better pigment than the craft paint and will hold a higher saturation of color. And here, same thing, I grabbed a little bit of that red, painted right on top of that yellow. And again, you want to kind of be careful as you blend from that red up into the yellow, and then wipe off that brush with the dark color, and then you can go back and blend some more. And again, practice this on some old canvases just so you can find your comfort level with these different blending methods. All right, so now we're going to move into the sponge effect. And this one's actually really fun for the first time painters. It takes away a lot of stress and frustration, and it's just kind of a fun application. So still using the craft paint on the left-hand side, artist grade or student grade paint on the right-hand side. Kind of doing that same application to where I'm putting the light color on top, then we'll put the dark color on the bottom, and then I'll switch methods. And I do this more for the craft paint just because it dries so quickly and my surface is dry, so it's actually absorbing the pigment very quickly. Now I've cleaned the brush, I'm going back to that light color and literally holding my brush perpendicular to the canvas, kind of making a bit of a stabbing motion. You can do this with a sponge as well. And it's kind of just this little tapping motion, and it'll pick up some of the red paint, it'll pick up some of the yellow paint, and it's just kind of a nice, quick, easy way to blend, especially for those of you that might be using the craft paint that dries quickly. You can do a couple of layers with this and kind of play with your blending. And again, try this on some old canvas panels or in your sketchbook and just kind of find what you like about each blending method. You can go back into that red paint, play with it. Same thing with the other methods. You want to be careful when you go from using the darker color into the lighter color, and it is okay to wipe off your brush in between those blending sections. So I'm going to switch over and do this with the student grade paint, exact same thing. I'm going to start with the darker color first, just to switch it up a little bit. And if you are inclined to even go ahead and start with that stabbing method or the stippling or sponge method, go right ahead and do that. I will do a stippling demo as a little bonus here in just a moment. So we've got our red at the base. I'm going to be moving into the yellow paint, and same thing, you're holding your brush perpendicular to the canvas and just tapping it and filling in the space, overlapping the colors as needed. All right, and just keep playing. You can go back and forth with the stabbing method with each color. And with the student grade paint, you can see that the paint is still wet and it is kind of picking up the color. So again, play with the pressure of your brush. It's okay to wipe your brush off in between as you're going from color to color. If you even want to do this finger painting, some of my students do that. That's kind of fun. But again, just try different blending methods. All right, so with this last little bonus one, this one's going to be stippling, also kind of an introduction to pointillism. And similar to the sponge method we just showed, we're going to be holding that brush perpendicular and just making dots. And this is more of what I call visual blending, because you're not actually blending the wet paint. You'll be putting the yellow on top of this after you put the red in there. And for those of you with the fast drying paint, this is a nice option and very, very approachable if you get frustrated with how quickly your paint is drying and you want to be able to do a little bit more blending. So enjoy as you watch this, and notice that as the little dots are closer together, it makes a more solid color. And then as there's more space in between the dots, it opens it up and is what we call kind of a light gradient and diffuses into that other color. And right now it's kind of diffusing just into the background, the white space, but I will be coming in with some yellow, doing the exact same thing. And again, when your dots are closer together, more of an opaque coverage. When they are further apart, a little less opaque and allowing the underneath section to shine through. And if you do like this method a lot, start researching a little bit more about pointillism. It is a really fun and very, very simple application for painting. And there's quite a few famous artists that you can follow and enjoy their work. And I do have some videos on my YouTube channel introducing pointillism. So no matter what, just always keep exploring different ways to get creative, because the most important thing is to get creative and paint or do something creative on a regular basis. So I hope you guys enjoyed the demo. Please let me know any questions that you might have. I can do a podcast about it or just answer you directly, but I'm really glad that you guys are painting and enjoying the process. So until next time, cheers.